should be the state of mind in which all of you should be right now. Absolutely blank. As your principal sir mentioned, that we need a blank whiteboard to start sharing our thoughts. There are three photos which I am showing here. One is related to science, one is related to sports, and one is related to economics. So can any one of you comment on these three photos or identify them? Yes? The first photo is related to science, which translated into something which medical fraternity takes advantage of nowadays. Second photo is related to sports, cricket to be more specific. And the third photo is economics. It happened in India a couple of years back. Any guesses? Yes, demonetization, right? Sports, any cricket lovers here? Bradley, see the last benches are giving the answers. What is the first photo? X-ray. So what is the correlation between all these three?
Innovation.
Okay. Science.
Trying to experiment something.
Yes. What is today's date? 8th of November, right? So while all of what you are telling is correct, the discovery of X-ray was reported on 8th November 1895. Bradley was born on 8th November 1976, and demonetization in India happened on the same date, 8th November 2016. So today's day is very important for all of us, and more of that is because I am getting an opportunity to talk to all of you on the same day, 8th November. Now generally when I visit a college, I try to find some slogan or some quotation to start the lecture or sharing my ideas. And I try to find out what is the context, and then accordingly, if there is something which I can quote from our ancient literature. So while I was doing that, I came across something which should be very much known to you, your own homepage of AMC College. And this was something which I thought will set the pace for our today's discussion. So basically we are talking about the vision which is talking to be a leader in imparting value, technical education and research for the benefit of society. Principal sir has nicely set the pace and he has explained how you all can do that. And your mission of AMC College, that is to provide good infrastructure to you, good faculties who are well versed in their subjects, and they will make you the future leaders. Vibrant ambience to do research and interface with the industry, because if you work in silos, you may again work in compartments. Today we say that Sanghe Shakti Kali Yuge. In Kali Yuga, Sang Shakti is what is important, that is to work in a consortium, not in silos. And last but not the least, generate and disseminate knowledge through startup training programs, workshops, seminars, conference and publications. So today's series is something which is in line with the last mission what AMC has charted out, that is we are having a workshop on something which you will not generally see in your curriculum. When we talk about mechanical engineering, electronics or mechatronics or aerospace, we are talking about very specific discipline-centric subjects to read. But when you go out of the boundaries of this college, you will need something extra to make yourself more employable. Because there will be lakhs and lakhs of students like you across India who will be competing with you when you are going to be there in the professional field. So there has to be that extra thing in you which needs to be, brought up. Yeah? I thought you were asking some questions. Fine. So this is something which I thought I'll share with all of you. Conventionally, we know how to do research through our academic, understanding. But there is another way of looking to how to go about doing research, specifically how to identify what to do. And that is what in few minutes that we will spend together today, we will try to share with you. I am also a student in this particular field, so maybe a more interactive thing will even benefit me. And I hope that I'll be able to share something which may be benefiting to you in your future. So basically the flow of discussion will be like this. We will try to set the pace by introducing knowledge economy and research, followed by what is patent analytics and patent maps, and then we will take a deep dive into doing a patent analytics for a very interesting technology which all of you will be coming across today, the urban air mobility. That is one of the areas which if you browse and you try to see, you will find lot of things happening in this particular area. So we will have a case study of this, followed by the tools which you can use for the patent analytics and which will help you to identify the areas of research which you may consider pursuing further. And also AI/ML, how that has now influenced the patent analysis domain today, because AI/ML is applied to all the areas. If you see anywhere nowadays, that has become a buzzword. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, all these jargons you will come across very frequently. And now that you have to go out of the campus and get a job, many of these things will serve to be an extra mileage in your resume also. So from that perspective, I just try to give you an introduction. The time which we have today is not sufficient to deep dive into this. This probably can be one semester subject altogether. So we will just try to have little understanding of this, so that some enlightenment happens, and finally when you try to apply them, you can make your ways through. Of course, we'll go slightly faster in this segment, because this is basically to set the pace. Already Principal Sir has given us the platform. So basically when we talk about economy, today it's not just the traditional economy. We are talking about knowledge, we are talking about innovations, we are talking about IPs. And that is driving the economics, rather than just in those olden days, maybe 25-30 years back, when economics was governed by only few yardsticks. And there are various aspects which differentiate the knowledge economy with the traditional economy. Now, couple of things that you should keep in mind is the asset for today's economy is not the hardware or not the infrastructure. It is the people who are working there. You all will be part of a very strong economy, and it is your skill sets which is going to help grow. Okay, so you cannot avoid or maybe what I would say, neglect this fact. Even though in our courses of engineering we don't really get into economics much, but when you go out of the boundaries of this college, you are going to definitely face these musics. Even now as you sit over here, most of you will be thinking how to get better perspectives outside. Right? So that is nothing but you are trying to connect to the economy. Now unless you have something special in you, how would you collect to the economy? So that is something which we will try to understand. There are various terminologies that you can come across when you talk about the knowledge economy. They call it knowledge-based economy, new economy, modern economy, and there are certain yardsticks also, like the knowledge economy index or the knowledge index, how they quantify the proportion of economics over here. And there are a lot of inputs which primarily, if you see, are based on innovations. So we are gradually going from economy to innovation in this particular framework. And there are various pillars, 4 main pillars of economy are presented over here. And if you see, one of the most important thing is the innovation system. How you think innovatively, how you think differently, how you are able to apply your understanding of basic science and translate it into something tangible. Because as an engineer, we are supposed to translate ideas into tangible assets. It's not just the idea which we live and which we write and with that it is over. As an engineer, we are supposed to translate into something tangible which can be used for the growth of our nation as well as the humanity if you increase the level of abstraction. So this brings us to the important fact that how do you innovate then? Now conventionally we know that we do research and then we develop it, then produce in marketing, and that's how the innovation gets translated from an idea to a product, and then we start earning money out of it. But there is also a chain link model which is iterative in process, wherein all these aspects, the research, knowledge and the interfaces which are going to link it with the outer world are iterating with each other. So the main thing over here which starts with is the research. So the next question which comes is, what do you think about research? Now when you go across and you see many of these things which are published, most of them will be mapped to these 17 sustainable development goals which UN had defined in 2015. Almost all these goals have around 8 to 12 sets of targets, and if you have to meet those targets, you have to go through that quest from unknown to known, and that journey of the quest to find the solution is basically what we commonly know as research. Now the conventional way of doing research is known to all of us. We will not really get too much into this. So you select a topic, you read something about that, and then you start finding the gaps in that, and then you start doing something which helps you to fill those gaps. There are various ways of even choosing how to do or what to do. This is also a very conventional way and typical approach what you can use for freezing on the direction of research. One which is generally followed in the academia, the 5 W's and H kind of thing, or identify the area, read a lot, then narrow the field, determine the type of investigation, dedicate significance, ensure the sustainability, topic endorsement, and finally you choose that this is what you should do and you start working on that. Depending upon that, there are various types of research also which you will come across, and each of them, like exploratory or conclusive, descriptive or qualitative, casual research, will have their own purpose and objectives. But if you look at the process, how you do that, either it will be qualitative or quantitative. So what you mean by quantitative is, this is what generally we know that we will try to recognize a problem, review it and then frame the problem. And then we develop the models. The models could be numerical or it could be experimental. We do the simulations, we do the experiments, try to get the data, and then infer from that what we can actually extract out of that. That forms the solving of the problem. Once you are convinced that you have already got what you started with as a solution, you document that, and that culminates into a research publication. So here you basically quantify your findings. There is another way of looking into the research which is more qualitative. For example, if you have a questionnaire and you make a Google sheet and you circulate it and you get a response for that, you can do the analysis of the answer, and from there you can infer certain things. Now this is, even though statistics is involved in this, but it is more qualitative in nature. You are not distinctly defining a number, which generally the engineers will look forward to. Now if you look at this, the last way of doing it is by patent analysis. So now we come to the main topic of our discussion, what is basically patent analysis. So now there are different stakeholders for the patent analysis. Two of them, that is the market and the intellectual property, are well known to us. But as a researcher also, you can look into the patent database and try to figure out what direction you can steer your research. And that is what we will be trying to understand in today's discussion, how not just a conventional literature survey of the published journal publications, but if you look at the patents also, how do they guide you, or how do they indicate a direction which you can consider for probing further into. So basically the problem is we want to identify the topic on which we want to do the research. So we determine the strategy of searching, then either with the published database or from the collection of patented information, we screen them and try to find certain patterns from there. What are the trends? What are the sort of networking? Principal sir mentioned about networking, the importance of networking in today's context. So how are the innovators networking with each other, and how that helps you to identify whom you can approach. Even that is useful for your employment, because while you do this, it is not just the research direction, but you also know who are those, which are those companies which are working on these technologies. So once you do something and once you innovate in that field, you may even get employed over there. So that is also another aspect which is important in this particular, we can say, the offshoot of this particular approach. So this brings us to the main topic of discussion today. What is basically patent analytics, or what is the importance of patent analysis, and what are the maps or what are the visual ways in which you can express them, your findings. Because again, please keep in mind, this is a qualitative approach. So you will not have numbers, you will not have a time series graph where you can see what are the parametric variations and then ascertain that this is what is going to happen. So in nutshell, basically what is patent? So we are talking about what are the technologies, when these technologies emerged or which direction they are going, who are the innovators, with whom they are networking for these innovations, which is the market for which these innovations go through. The different new approaches and the perspectives are also visible when you do a patent analysis search. And you also come to know the regional or the geographic location of such work. Where is it happening at global level, or is it specific to a country or a nation or a particular region? Whether it is done by established players, whether there are startups who are trying to do work on that, because most of today the youngsters are of the opinion that they should independently start something of their own. That's where the concept of the startups has become very popular. I think while some of you may want to have a safe employment, a secure employment, many of you may want to venture into and take risks. So with such studies, you can also see which are those areas where the startups are also trying to do something. The market size, shape, and all those things are more to do with the system of system kind of a framework. So as we mentioned, the multiple stakeholders will look into this particular patent analytics or patent analysis from their perspective. So while the developers will try to see how to expand the field of patent analytics, the inventors will see who all are doing similar research work and how can they differentiate themselves from the others. The economist will see it from the economics perspective, money, return on investment. The HR professionals probably will be seeing, whether there are any new discoveries and whether they can be, retained to productive inventors in their companies. But what we are concerned is with the researchers who will try to verify the aspects of your research. If you have done something, who will tell you what you are doing is right or wrong? So there has to be somebody, some subject expert, who needs to see your work, and then tell you whether it is done correctly or not. Now many a times we don't really get that opportunity to meet such experts. So by doing the patent analytics and the patent analysis part of that specifically, you yourself can endorse or see whether really what you have done is relevant for today's world, or is it something which is ancient or totally irrelevant. So this is where we will be focusing in the next segment of our discussion. From researchers' perspective, the patent analytics and patent analysis. So primarily, what do you mean by patent analytics? It's basically a structured and a meaningful presentation of the data, which will, with the help of tools, it could be a proprietary tool, it could be a open source tool, and visualize that and then see the narration, what emerges out of that. So this is a very simple definition of patent analytics. And patent analysis forms the post-processing part. So we start with the patent database, retrieve the patents, transform into a structured data, which is called as pre-processing, then extract the structure out of the data, for which we will see the different ways in which you can represent the data which you have collected. That is called processing, and then finally coming out with the post-processing. So again, just the generic workflow, like you start with searching the database, and then you obtain what is relevant to your analyzing them, visualizing them, and sharing. Probably our focus will be more onto the visualization part, because that will help us to steer the direction or come to know really what we think is something worth spending few more years of our time and do some research on that. So this is a glimpse of the plots. What we will do is we will go through some of them quickly, and also try to see with the example of urban air mobility, that when you plot these graphs, how do you infer from them the direction of research. So the graph will be seen from different, as I told the stakeholders, different stakeholders will see the same graph from different perspectives. But many people would have seen the apple falling from the tree, but only one person questioned why it fell down and not went somewhere else. So it is the perspective from which you look into the graph. So basically the different patent analytics that you will typically come across are the patent landscape reports, the portfolio analysis, business competitive intelligence reports, freedom to operate analysis, technology watches, technology bulletins, and general statistics. What we will be focusing today will be a part of the patent landscape reports. Now I don't want to get into too much of detail of the report, so I've just given you the link over here, that is the guidelines for preparing a patent landscape report, which is published by World Intellectual Property Organization. So the nitty-gritty of how one can make a patent landscape report, what does it include, what are the inferences, those things are captured in this kind of a report. You can go through this in detail if you are interested. Maybe because we will deviate if we go in that direction at this moment. So basically patent landscaping can be applied at any stage of the product development. The product development starts with an ideation, then convert that into an invention, proving the concept by making a prototype, implementing it, and then the cycle keeps on iterating. So at the college level, probably you may come from this step to here, over here, and then most of us will stop at this stage. We'll make a prototype, do the experiments, and then we'll get our degrees and then say tata bye bye to the college and then go to our worldly voyage outside. But if you have to be really serious about that, you'll have to see that the concept or the prototype goes to the market. Then only you're going to have benefit or the financial benefit out of that. Otherwise it's just maybe a mere publication at the most. So patent landscaping can be applied at any stage of this product development cycle. So here we can see, basically this is the product development cycle, where you understand the need of the customer, then you define the concept, plan the specification, develop it, validate it, and then support and deliver the product. Now at each stage the patent landscaping will culminate into different reports. So the first place where it is dealing with the customer needs, you will get into the technology survey map. When you are developing, you will also see whether whatever you have done is already protected by somebody. So we talk about the freedom to operate landscaping. And finally, when the product is ready for launch, at that time the IP portfolio management and landscaping reports are critical. But for defining the research direction, this is the most apt tool to understand. So already in the last slide I have told you, if you need to go through in depth of how this report is made, you can visit VPO's site and the report is available free for download. You can go through that. And again, when you talk about these reports, they will have different maps. Again, there are qualitative ways and quantitative ways to plot those maps. So this is what the different approaches that are available, quantitative as well as the qualitative approach for generating the maps. We initially talked about qualitative research, quantitative research. Now research itself, when you want to represent anything, it becomes again these two bifurcations. So when you come across these maps, there are about 12 which we have highlighted over here, and each of them, what are the various methods and what are the common forms in which they are present. So we'll go one by one in depth of this and then try to understand how this will help you to steer the direction of research. So the first one is based on the elements. So here there is an illustration of an electric bike. So visually when this map is plotted, it is very easy to interpret that when you are talking about the configuration of motor, already there are many things that people have done. If you talk about the drive ratio control also, there are a lot of people who have filed the patents. But this area, self-charging regenerative braking or arrangement of the batteries, there are less patents. So as a researcher, if I look at this graph, what I will try to think is based on my background, whether I can work on something in these particular aspects. The second thing is technology development pattern. This is mainly a time series, and again it says which inventions have continued or they are still being researched. So as a researcher, again when I look at this graph, I will try to opt for some work which is in line with this particular line. Because some of these inventions have happened up to 1980s and then there is no further innovations. Now please remember, all these graphs are generated based on the patent database. So they are authentic source, unlike any unendorsed information that is available in the open domain. The third example is about the inter-patent relationships. You will come across terms like forward or backward citations in the patent. So this also tells you which are those patents which are cited more, and which still they are serving as a fundamental backbone. So as a researcher, if I had to choose a topic, I would rather try to see whether I can do something in this particular area rather than going to a derivative of that, maybe a secondary or a tertiary derivative areas. This is another important thing, the matrix map. So here basically the different ways of solving the problem and the different problems are put together and the patents are collected. Now if you can carefully see over here, there are gaps over here. Now this is something we call as a white space landscaping, wherein you identify that for a particular problem there have been lot of technological solutions which have been brought by this technique. But whether there is a scope of even solving the problem with the other techniques that are available, that can then become your research direction, the white space analysis. Just to elaborate a little bit more, here there are different areas of application, and then the material science part, the different materials which are available in the market, they are plotted in the column, and then the rows are on the different industries. So here you can infer, for example, this particular space over here is vacant. What that means is polyurethane is not being used in 3D printing shoes or shoe soles. Which means now if you are working, say, a mechanical engineer or a mechatronics engineer in the manufacturing side, can you think about some such techniques where you can use it for 3D printing of the shoe or shoe soles? Because there is a void over here. So this is a research direction which I can choose or I can opt for. Now this emerges from this white space analysis. Similarly, this is a more artistic form of looking into it, like the systematized art diagram for the wind turbine. So wherein again here also different technologies, what are the patents that are available is captured. So again, looking at this, for example, if you look at say this particular area, system technologies, now there are ample things in formulation as a system or safety system, but in other there are less. Now then you can go in depth of what are the other technologies in this system technology, and then see whether you can choose an area which is in line with this and then try to probe further into that. This is a typical timeline series which tells you the trend in which for a particular technology the patents have been filed over a period of time. So here the CPU technology is presented, and you can see it's kind of a sinusoidal variation of the patent filing, which tells you that the industry is still live, but it is sinusoidally oscillating. So it is a risky thing to venture into doing some research, maybe in this technology, but yes, the scope exists. A similar thing is the twin peak map, wherein it bifurcates a particular technology. For example, here you have the optical disc technology, under which you have sub-verticals like the technology substrate production, optical disc, principles of recording, reproduction. So reproducing all these things will have their own individual time series of the number of patents that are filed for each of these sub-verticals. So again, this tells you whether something has saturated and it is now at the verge of not much worth looking into that particular area, or whether something is still live and we can still think of innovation in those areas which can later be taken as a research direction. This is another example of maturation chart. So here what we see is whether that particular technology is in its developmental period, it has already matured, whether the interest is declining, whether it is stagnant, or whether there is another pickup in this. So again, this is a generic chart for a particular technology. You can always see the plot of this and then you can decide, like if the technology is still in the developing period, then it becomes something which you can take up as your research interest. Whereas something which is already matured and where there is a stagnation point, you can put a pause, because there is always a chance that an abruption may happen in the industry and it may again recover back. So then you can again think of doing research in that direction in the recovery period of the patent. Same thing is related with mapping. Now many of these things may not directly give you an indication of the research where you should go, but you can always see which are the companies. So this chart tells you which are the companies which have patented the continuous variable transmission technologies, starting with Nissan and then the other giants in the automotive sector. This also gives you a chance to identify your future employer, because you will have some expertise and you can identify which are the companies which are also working on these technologies. So whether you can get employment in those companies. So that also becomes very glaringly visible using this ranking map. Same thing is the case of the shared map, where it says you what is the share of the patents which are being filed from different stakeholders like corporates, or whether this individual who is filing. So this doesn't really give you much direction to the research, but tells you whether even the individual levels people are working on that. So that can maybe inspire you to take up some things on those lines. And this is an example of a skeleton map, which is a relatively comparative version of what we saw in the past, all those statistics, and specifically it is linked to the regions. So that way you can also try to understand in which countries the technology or the areas which you are researching are still live, and then you can even think of shifting, because most of the youngsters are now very ambitious and want to go abroad for doing for pursuing their professional careers. So these kind of graphs, which is an outcome of the patent analysis, even tells you which country to think of going to. This is an example of a radar map, wherein the enabling technologies of one particular mother technologies are plotted, whereas how many patents are being filed over a period of different years. So you can see three graphs over here. They are for 3 different years. So you can again ascertain whether that particular field is growing, or whether it is stagnant, or whether it has died out. So basically what we are telling is in order to see all those visualizations, we need to follow a procedure to map them or to generate them. So that is basically presented in this slide. We will go into depth of that through a case study. So as I was mentioning, urban air mobility is what I have taken as an example. And we have done an elementary patent analysis. We have just given urban air mobility as the search term, and then try to see what the tool throws out to us, see those plots and try to understand how they can help us to, identify our research directions. So we have used a proprietary tool, orbital intelligence, and as I told, we have applied it for the urban air mobility platform. And the findings of those, some of them we will be just seeing. And the reason why I have shown you the previous patent maps is you will actually see that happening when you get involved in the patent analysis. So basically, when we talk about the the development in the aerospace or say civilian aircraft industry, it started with the motorized aviation and then the commercial aircraft propulsions and then commercial aircraft with gas turbine jet engine based things. Now we are talking about electric propulsion. We are talking about eco-friendly modes of transportation. One being the all electric or more electric aircraft. So that has paved way for thinking in lines of the urban air mobility. Now there are various architectures that are possible here. You can have multi-copters, you can have lift plus cruise, you can have tilt rotors, you can have tilt wing technologies. There are many architectures that are possible for the urban air mobility. So now if we have to think like I want to do some research in this area, how do I identify which area I should venture into? Okay. So now if you go conventionally, like you Google out the research papers and you try to find out some areas where it would be useful to venture into, this is typically what you may end up with. Like we may think that distributed propulsion is one area that we can think of working. Improving the power and energy density of the batteries. This is another area which is very difficult to, which is challenging, which we are facing. Thermal and energy management, because once you have so many electronics and electrical items, managing the thermal and electrical aspects are energy is important. Mechanical engineers will also, be interested in this because thermal science is what we study over here. Electrical, electronics, mechanical. So we are talking about Mechatronics division, group department over here. So how do you integrate all of them together? There will be something which you may think worth exploring. Automated flights, this is mainly into the aerospace domain. Flight dynamics team, those who are working in flight dynamics, for them these areas may trigger some interest. Of course, acceptance by community is more to do with social science, sociology. End-to-end passenger experience is more with the operations, which we generally don't come across in our conventional academic career. Verification, certification is important because human life is involved, so it's not as simple as make something like a drone and fly it out without taking permissions from the statutory bodies. So verification of what you have done correctly and how to certify that, those are also areas where research is possible. Now this is a picture which will emerge when you just Google this particular term, urban air mobility, and see the publications that are available. Now let us see if you try to apply the patent analytics, what do we come out with? So this is a typical GUI, orbital intelligence. This is a proprietary tool which is offered by Questel. I'm not marketing the tool, but just giving you a flair that how easy it is to use it. But there are other open source alternatives also, which we will see in couple of slides later. So you just, the institute will have its own login. If it is an individual subscription, you will have your own login. So you log into the site, and then this is what is the first screen that you will see over here, which will be typically what you can see in many of the patent database searching platforms also, and even Google. We are very familiar with doing the basic search, the advanced search, and all those things. Even in our emails, we have these options. So what we did is we just keyed in urban air mobility, and then we tried to search. We have left all these things blank because it's just to introduce you to the once you choose certain tools and do it yourself, you will have more grip over this. So once you do that, after some times, it will throw all those patent informations which are related to the search term. Now the advantage here is you have the patent also along with that. So if you are interested and curious to know by seeing the topic of that, you can even click on these patents and then even go in depth. Now this is something which you will not generally see in the research publications. The research publication, if you see the structure of the research publication, it will be only like, you do a literature survey, then you define a problem, and then you define your methodology, and then you show the results. How did you do? That is not shown. What is done, the pain of doing research is not visible in the research publication. They will give you the engineering aspects of that. That in turn may help you to, it may endorse. Like you would have had some thoughts. One of those patents had already patented it. So while one way is looking at it pessimistically, saying that, oh my God, whatever I was thinking is already patented. The other thing is you should appreciate that you have independently thought of something which somebody is abroad or somebody in India with, who is authority in the field has also done, and he has tried to copyright, which means what you are thinking is really great. So that boosts up your confidence level also. So having located the database, then we go for the analytics part of it. So that is where all the maps will start appearing. So the first screen you generally see for this particular tool is, it will throw everything together. You will have the time series, then you will have the top layers, you will have the top, matches, and then the geographical location of where all these patents are. So what we do is, we click on one of them. For example, I have to go in depth of the time series of this particular technology. So what do I do is, and then I go in depth of that. This can be plotted in various ways. Either I plot it this way, or I can plot it this way. Now what is the inference that I can draw out of this? So the search term was the urban air mobility. What I see over here is from 2018 there was a steep increase in filing of the patents for urban air mobility. That means this technology was researched all across the globe during 2018 to 2022. But then there is a gradual decrease in filing of the patent, which means while urban air mobility we are getting the awareness today, but technology wise or innovation wise gradually it is declining. But it has not yet stopped. It has not. There is some research going on, and people are still trying to innovate, but not at the intensity it was in 2022. So this is one inference you can gain out of this graph. You can also plot that in the form of a pie chart, or it depends upon the individual. Each individual will have their own comfort ways of looking into a plot or a graph. And it can be a simple text also, which with the font size increase, it tells you that 22 was the time when more patents were filed, which means there was an increase in innovation from 19 to 22, and then gradually it is declining. Now there are various ways of visualizing the database here. So these are some of the ways this tool gives the opportunity to see what you have collected. And you can choose, it's all up to you. Like as I told, some of you may be conversant or may be comfortable with say something like a heat map. Some of you may be conversant with a time series. Some of them you will be conversant with the networking diagram. So it is all your choice. Okay, so it is just a different way of looking into the database that is collected by yourself. So now let us come to the outcome of what was happening. So in the past, what a few slides we have shown that there are different ways of representing the data. So here you see that this plot will illustrate the number of alive patents protected across various offices. So that means if you talk about urban air mobility, America is really very sensitive to this technology, followed by China. Russia, India, and some of the South American countries, Australia, are still there. Okay, so that is what we come to know. So your geographical location of where these innovations are valued more is coming out from this plot. Then again, this we have already discussed the time series. So we see the ascending trend and the descending trend in the UAM technologies. Of course, this is only UAM. You can go in depth of that, the sub technologies, and see. You may find some of these things are still, relevant for today's innovative market. So then you can think of doing research in those aspects also. This is more like, visualization based on the 35 IPC sections. Each section will have their own subsections as it is, shown over here. Typical way in which you will come across your patent classification. So again, here if you see, UAM in the context of transport is saturated. But if you look at the civil engineering, there is still some scope. When you talk about say materials or metallurgy, we still have some scope in that. IT, it is gradually, there is something which we can do about it. Telecommunication, digital communication, optics, there are these areas which are still in this zone, which tells you that there is something which you can think of doing in this area and define your area for your focus of research in some of these applications. So this is what we come to know from this particular plot. Again here this is an illustration of the inventors who are working in the area of urban air mobility, the individuals. So many a times when you start a research work and you get a roadblock, you need to discuss with somebody. So this kind of plots will tell you who are those inventors who are working in that particular area of research and whom you may probably can contact, and then see if they can help you to troubleshoot your problems. So that way it helps you to identify the external, or it could be an Indian inventor also, and then approach them to see whether if you want to have a solution to some problem that you are working on, whether you can do that. So that is that is something which you can gain out of this particular plot. The next thing is the key players. So again this is associated with mostly the companies which are working in this particular area. So Honeywell International is the forerunner in this particular technology. So probably to define your research directions, you can start following Honeywell or their publications or their websites to see what are those things which they are right now trying to work on, and then see whether your educational background supports you to pursue something in those directions. This is again something which is a different form of the previous graph, where it says that which of the patents are granted or which are pending, which are dead or not. So for example, if you see over here, even UAM technologies, Honeywell is aggressively pursuing. Robert Bosch company, they have given away all their innovations, which means now if you are looking at this particular technology, I mean the ones who will be more interested to maybe sometimes fund also will be these companies, and they do fund lot of academic research. So that is another way of looking into the information from this graph. Again here this is another example of the same plot which we have seen in the past, basically talking about whether there are any litigations or any oppositions, or whether it is published or licensed. So those information, not much to do with the research direction, but yes, you may get some information about the licensing part. So which of them are profitable, which of the technologies are profitable. Again this is the heat map. So again this helps you, as we have already seen, the white spaces that are available in this map could be the potential areas where you can think of venturing, because there are no much IPs recorded in those areas. And another way of doing the study is to see how much investment these various companies do. So for example, Honeywell had invested in these technologies and now their investment is coming down, whereas LG Electronics has invested a lot in urban air mobility in the past few years, maybe 23-24. This also tells you about the company and their policies. So when you do a work and it is falling in these areas and you want to sell that, so I am getting into the entrepreneurship part of your work. So if you want to sell your ideas, where you can go. So that information also you can get from these kind of plots. So which companies are still investing, who are interested in such work, and whether you are, if it's really a good idea, whether you can sell it to them. And finally this is the networking, wherein you see how each of these stakeholders or each of these industries, how they are networking with each other in this particular area of urban air mobility. So how much dependent the others are on them. So it illustrates the citation between the application and helps you to identify the portfolio that have a strong interaction. So So for example, Honeywell's innovations are impacting many of the small innovators also. Okay, so when you are doing research work, you should identify something which is falling in the domain which is more impacting the other innovators. So then you will have more takers rather than just doing it in isolation and confining it to a research publication. So now we have talked about all these ways of representing the data. But the question is then how do you do? Do we do it manually? Because we are not talking about one or two or some 5 articles. We are talking about hundreds, thousands, or sometimes even lakhs, depending upon your search term and the criteria that you give. So in that context, you need some tool to also gather the data, to clean them and then try to analyze them. So in that context, if you talk about the database, there are freely available. You talk about USPTO, you talk about European Patent Office, you talk about the Google Patents, World Intellectual Property Organization. Their databases are all open. Now it comes to the tool, you have an ocean of tools. I mean, this itself will maybe drive you crazy, because there is so much of tools that are available in the market. So from academic point of view, I always advocate the use of open source tools. Even though commercial tool chains will have their own advantage, like they have the embedded patent database, you don't have to worry about linking the open source database with the tool and then doing the analysis, or they also have compatibility with the patent search tools and then dedicated data. But as a academia, it is always better to look to the open source tools. First reason is you don't have to pay anything for that. Other thing is it's totally in your control. So you just download, or if it is online, it's a web-based tool, you just start using it if you have an internet connection. So in that context, of course, everything will have positives and negatives. Already I mentioned it's free of cost, but we need to do a lot of customization for that. You have flexibility, and you have users community which can help you to troubleshoot when you start using them. What it doesn't have is, it doesn't have probably a user-friendly GUI, graphical user interface, and you may need to do some programming, some basic programming to use these tools. And there may be several bugs, because these are all developed by students like you across universities. So some troubleshootings in terms of bug debugging the program also may be required, and there is no commercial support. And another thing that we are always fascinated nowadays is the AI and ML. So this particular field has also not got untouched or remained untouched from the artificial intelligence or machine learning. Most of you might have seen these graphs, like artificial intelligence, and then machine learning is a subset of that. And if you talk about the deep learning, is a subset of artificial intelligence or a subset of machine learning. So these approaches have been used in aerospace, they have been used in mechanical engineering, they have been used in mechatronics, civil, electrical, electronics. You name the field, you have it. Not just engineering, even social sciences or any other economics, we use AI and ML. I mean, this has become a buzzword. And there are various categories of generative tools. Most of you might have come across this, and some of you may be also using that. So these are also useful for doing the patent analysis. Very typical approach, basically the neural networks and the deep learning support vector algorithms. You will be coming across all these acronyms also nowadays in some other context. But surprisingly, even the patent analytics can be done using these approaches. So just to give you a flare of that, you can use the classification for inputting the patent database and getting out the label out of that. Or you can even use AIML for patent claim generation. That is, you input the patent data, and the BERT and the GPT, which we are very much familiar with, will give you the generated patent claims. Similarly, the neural network taxonomies or the architectures can be used for the identification of images. Same thing for quality of the patent also. You can develop ML or deep learning based models which will take multiple inputs and then will tell you whether the quality is good or bad. So with these things, even the today's the techniques or the approaches which you might have come across and maybe applying to your present day work are also applied to the patent analytics in various ways. As I told already, for different tasks, different algorithms can be applied. To be more specific, for classification, you have traditional neural network, or you will have ensemble method, large language models. A similar thing for retrieval, quality analysis, and generation. So I think this is what is it all about, the patent analytics. So basically, what we have, what I am trying to make a point is, commonly we know that research leads to patent. Okay, but there is also an uncommon approach of going to define your research directions using the patent database. We have seen the overview of knowledge economy research, and then the patent analytics, patent maps, case study using the urban air mobility as one of the areas, and the various tools that can help you do that, and the AI/ML. But all these things we have only seen the bird's eye view of that, because this itself is a very involved understanding. So what I would request you all is, like, if you are interested, you can initiate exercises using the patent analytics with the open source tools which are freely available for download, and then using this, first of all, get conversant with the methodology of patent analysis, and then, as we discussed, try to see it from a researcher's perspective of whether you can identify the research verticals of in your chosen areas by applying the patent analytics, rather than just going by the beaten track of looking at the papers, the research publication, and then trying to define your problems. Because this will be much more robust. The database is reliable, which is very important for applying AI/ML algorithms. So with this, I thank all of you for your patience. I know I have bored you enough, so I think I will thank Professor Amuthan sir, who has really nicely helped in conceiving this, and heads of the departments, all of you who are present here, management director, principal staff from my parent organization, and all of you, the audience who have patiently bared with me for the past, I don't know how much time I have taken. Some of you must be fast asleep, so maybe it's lunch time is also approaching, so there's something to be happy about. But thank you all, and if you have any queries, you can get in touch with me at the below credentials over my email, professional, personal, as well as my WhatsApp. Thank you.